Hello everybody, you're very welcome here this afternoon. My name is Julie Murphy. I work with the Cork Arts and Health Programme, and I've been involved in the Amulet steering group for about the last 2 years. For me, it's been a very moving and illuminating experience to be part of this project, and it's been a journey of discovery, both in terms of my work and also in terms of my own family life. I'd like to start today just to give you just some sense of where this project came from. The seeds of this project were sown back in 2009 when Edel Nolan, who is the arts coordinator in Cork University Hospital, invited Marie and the craftswomen from Ballyfehantoker Arts and Crafts Initiative to become involved in an arts and health research project in the Cork University Maternity Hospital. And that project centred around working with staff in the hospital and with mothers expecting newborn babies on the creation of amulets. And amulets are keepsakes, invoking protection of loved ones. They're material objects, but they're not only made up of material substance, they're also essentially composed of deep emotional intent. So because people's hearts and souls and wishes for their loved ones are invested in amulets, they're very precious objects. So while the Amulet project was happening at that stage in CUMH, at the same time the craftswomen from Ballyfehantoker Arts and Crafts Initiative were involved in their own local community on making layettes for the maternity hospital to give to families of deceased infants. And as the work progressed through the intertwining of the amulet with the making of the layettes, two very significant insights, I suppose, surfaced. One of these was the realisation that the layettes that were being made by groups of women in Ballyfehan weren't only garments in which to clothe newborn infants, but they were also amulets, because they were deeply invested with love and care and empathy. And the second significant realisation was that amulets are not only very significant as celebratory objects for welcoming new life into the world, but that they also had deep emotional potency and power as commemorative and memorial objects for marking the lives of infants who died before, during and after birth. And I suppose that realisation hadn't been anticipated at the start of the project, but once people came to understand that role and that power of the amulets, everybody was very moved by it. And it brought the Amulet project down a different road. And that road was really a calling to recognise and respond in a deep and creative and very respectful way to the experience of infant loss. And that's what this Amulet project that we're all here today to mark has been about. So over the last 18 months, Marie has been working with 10 families who've experienced infant loss. And together they have cultivated a space of deeply respectful honouring and recognition and remembrance of the lives that people have carried and the loss that they have experienced. This work has been accomplished through the medium of amulets. And these amulets are keepsakes that each of the 10 women involved in this project have gathered, created and stored as their way of preserving the memory of the life that they have lost. And in the course of this project, what has happened was that each of those women met privately with Marie, and they shared with her their amulets and the stories that gave meaning to them. And out of that reservoir of 10 individual storehouses of amulets, Marie has filtered that through her own artistic vision and she has created a work that collectively evokes a sense of infant loss. That work is titled Anamnesis, which is a Greek word meaning recollection, and that's the work that everybody is going to see for the first time later today in the Serious Arts Centre. I think it's evident that this work could not have been done without the 10 people who participated in this project having the courage to embark on a journey of emotional risk. And risk involves both hope, and it also involves apprehension. This Amulet project sits right on the cusp of that emotional tension. So it has within it both the hope maybe that this work will shed some new light on infant loss, but also it contains the apprehension of maybe too much exposure and a fear to protect the vulnerability that's deep within the project, as well as the courage that people have shown in sharing their very personal, private, cherished keepsakes with Marie in this project. They've also shown amazing generosity and trust, because it takes a big leap of trust to, in a way, hand into someone else's keeping something that's so personal and so cherished. And each of the women who've been part of this project have entrusted Marie with that, and they have allowed her the space to go and take what they've given her and transform it into something unknown. And I think that the 10 people who've participated in this project deserve deep respect for the courage and the trust and the generosity that they have shown. Before we go to the Serious this evening to see this work, we're going to spend some time here in the Crawford this afternoon, journeying in a bit more detail into the landscape of the Amulet and gaining maybe more of an understanding of what the process has involved. As Marie has said, you're going to hear in a short while from 3 people who've been involved in different ways in this project. You're going to hear from Bernice, who's been a participant on the project. You're going to hear from Kathy, who's a bereavement and loss midwife in Limerick Midwestern Hospital. And you're going to hear from Marie herself, who has led and guided the project. And each of them is going to talk about what it meant for them to be involved in this project. As Marie has said, it's very important to everyone who's up here that you would feel free and welcome to connect in at any point and to express your thoughts, your responses or your questions to what you've experienced of the Amulet and what you're encountering here today. Today it's a gathering of people who have come from many different directions to the Amulet, but everybody here cares deeply about the work, and they care about the emotional experience that lies at the heart of it. And today is really, it's a space for all of the voices that make up the Amulet to be heard and to be listened to. As I said at the start, for me it's been a very moving experience to be involved in this project. And one of the things that happened is that the Amulet created a space whereby an unmet commemorative need within my own family became unearthed, and it also provided the safety to respond to that in some way. It's also been a real privilege to have witnessed such a deep and sensitive sphere of human experience being responded to in such a thoughtful, sensitive and creative way. I know she's not going to be very happy with me saying this, but I do want to especially acknowledge the integrity, the commitment, the vision, the sensitivity and the wonderful artistic ability that Marie has brought to this project, and it's an inspiration to work with her. I'm curious about what the rest of today will bring, and I very much hope that it will be a memorable and enriching day for all of you here, and that you'll find something that resonates for you throughout the day.
Mary has forged a lot of relationships with a lot of groups and individuals over the last couple of years. And now, if you can imagine, the image I have is a spider's web, and now today is an opportunity for those relationships to connect crossways as well as through Mary. And so we hope that you will contribute to the conversation. Okay, next is Cathy Quinn. Cathy has come down from Limerick to be with us today. She is recently retired, but says she's busier than ever. So she's a clinical, or until recently, I suppose, formerly a clinical midwife specialist in bereavement, who has worked for 21 years in the area of perinatal bereavement in the maternity services. And as well as being a nurse and midwife, she's also an accredited professional counsellor with a master's degree in counselling from New Jersey. Okay, Cathy Quinn.
When Mary first approached us in the maternity in Limerick about the Amulet project, first of all, I was wondering, what's an amulet? You know, I was that far back. And then when we read the email and the information, we gained more information, and eventually we to and fro, and then Mary came up and she had a meeting with my manager, who's here today, Margaret Quigley, myself, and one of the midwives on the ward. And the question would be for us, you know, why do this project? And as midwives, we have a huge duty of care to our mothers, huge duty of care. So do you want to involve them in something? These are women and parents, siblings, extended family, who have been bereaved. So they're very vulnerable. So do you want to involve them in such a project? So we had to look at, well, how could this help them, I suppose, number one. But before that, we wanted to see who Mary Brett was. Okay, so we met her. And I would have to say, and I know Margaret is in total agreement with me, she arrived punctually, of course, and in a hospital you're never punctual, you're always pulling and dragging. And we met with her for maybe an hour and a half. And I would have to say, within that period of time, I could get from her that she was a very compassionate woman, mother, artist, all of those things. She had huge empathy for bereaved families, huge empathy. And I didn't really know her journey before she arrived to us. She of course, she had so much work done already. Huge sensitivity. There was an aura from her that you knew this woman would do no harm. And when the meeting had finished, and Mary had left, myself and Margaret spoke, and we were quite sure that our parents would be quite safe in this situation. And then the question was, who would you choose? You know, I could have, for 21 years, I have worked with bereaved parents. So who would you choose for this project? I could have chosen many. But it so happened a few weeks beforehand that I had been chatting to a mum on the phone who had delivered many years ago. And these women would ring me. I might get maybe 10, 15 phone calls in a given year in relation to registering their baby, especially if the baby was stillborn. Because we didn't have stillbirth registration until after 1995 in Ireland. It was only recognised after that in the state. So they would ring up and they would say, you know, I had a baby way back, and I don't know now, would you have any notes? They were almost apologetic when they'd ring up. And I'd say, of course, yeah, I'll get your file and whatever. And I would invite them in and give them the information they need, and they could register their baby. But I had spoken to this woman, as I had spoken to many women down through the years, but I needed to ring this woman back about something. And I thought, you know, it would be lovely to give her an opportunity to create in some fashion an amulet, because these women, as that woman would have said to me on the phone, she had nothing that time. And she was so right. And so that's why she wanted her certificate, and I would issue her with a hospital certificate and a blessing certificate as well. But I thought, let's offer her the opportunity to be part of this amulet. So that was what I did, and I felt she would represent all those mothers that I had spoken to down through the years. And I have great compassion for those mothers and fathers and siblings, and I've met them all. I could have a sibling coming to register their sibling, or a dad coming to register his child, so that was one of my mums. I had two to choose, and then I said after that, now I still have hundreds out there, and who will I choose? So she represented a huge group of ladies. So then I thought, I had a mum at the time who is present here today, and she had twins, and one of her twins had died in pregnancy. And it's extremely difficult. And sometimes people are of the opinion, sure, you had two and you've one now and you're grand. This kind of mad mathematics. And I thought, you know what? I'd like her to have an opportunity to tell her story and to have an amulet created. So I choose her. Okay, I could have chosen many more. So again, I rang both of them, introduced the idea of the amulet, and they both thought about it, and we discussed it, and they felt safe going ahead with this. And I was in the background anyhow as part of the journey. So they did that. So I felt, as midwives, I felt that in the hospital, when a baby dies, we are there with the parents, and we actually help the parents to create memories. We give them choices. We support them in creating memories, keepsakes, or amulets, if we want to call it that. So I felt that this process was an extension of what we do as midwives anyhow. And I would be, any of you who know me know I am passionate about the whole area of bereavement, of helping mothers, fathers, siblings. And I would say that today is a new dawning. As we are here today in the Crawford Gallery, we are here celebrating the end of the Amulet project with the beginning of something new, which is bigger than any of us, and that is bringing awareness to society in general, to us as health professionals, knowing that we have come out of the darkness where there was no support for bereaved parents, and here we are you publicly acknowledging the grief that parents go through, the intensity of that journey, and the importance of creating memories. When an adult dies, or it can be a younger person as well, there are memories. There are so many memories, and we have keepsakes that keeps us connected with the person that has died. When a little baby dies, there's very few memories. I won't say there's no memories, because even in very early pregnancy, there's the memory of the pregnancy. Okay, that's always there, but it's the tangible memories. And I'm so delighted that we're at this stage, and 21 years down the road, when I started off, I had to communicate, maybe not in the best way, collaborate with the systems, because there was very little happening in the health services at that stage. And keeping with the C's, I suppose, caused huge consternation at times in the systems to get systems in place that would help parents. So I'm going to finish now, because 10 minutes are up, I'd say, and I want to sit down, believe it or not. But I would finish my talk in saying I truly honour these parents, their siblings, their families, in having the courage to live again in spite of their huge trauma and their huge loss, and in helping us every day, if we listen, to learn more about what it is like when your baby dies. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Audrey Moore and I'm a midwife in the Cork University Maternity Hospital. And I was originally one of the few people that started back in 2009 at the research phase. And I was always very interested in bereavement and loss. I trained in Limerick and had an awful lot to do with Cathy. And I had a huge, I kind of had a historical society interest in like how you judge a society is not how you do the great things. We can all do balloons and candles. It's how you do the sadder things and the softer things. And I always felt that's where you should benchmark how you are as a society, or how you're delivering, or where you're going. And I always had a great interest in listening and reading about people's stories. And when I came down to the Erneville to work, my mother said, "You were born in the Erneville." And her memory is that when she came from the labour ward, there wasn't any beds, and she was on a trolley. And she was on a trolley for about a couple of hours. She said it a day and a night. But she was waiting for a woman to go home because she was going to get her bed. And that woman had had a stillborn baby. And she couldn't really feed me sitting on the trolley because she was a bit sore. And she said that she remembers the woman asked her before she'd go home, would she mind if she fed me as a baby, that she just wanted to feed a live baby before she'd leave the hospital. And I said to my mum, what was the woman's name? And she doesn't remember anything about her, but that she was from the Mallow area. That's all she remembers about her 41 years ago. And since I've heard that story, I've often thought about that woman out in Mallow. And I think of her with great kindness, and I'd say a little prayer, that she had to leave the hospital in the middle of a postnatal ward with a woman going home with her third live child, and she had to leave with nothing. And for her to have to ask, can I feed your baby? I just want to feel a live baby before I leave. And that was 40 years ago, 41 years ago. And I think always to see, are you going on the right map of a journey? Are you going the right area? You need to see where you come from, and are you still on the right road? And for me, the Amulet made us all stop a little while and ask ourselves, is what we're doing, are we doing it any better? Can we ask people, would they like to do it any differently? I can't decide to go in and decide, will make a life journey better for somebody else. I haven't travelled that life distance. All I can say is that I have a huge empathy for anybody, and that empathy nearly increased when I became a mother myself, because I thought my feelings as a mother is no different to feelings of any other mother that had given birth in the last 500 years. And how is that we've lost that? And I thought this was a very good opportunity to see, can we even give a voice for this point in history that might be a learning point for another 20 or 30 years' time. And that was a huge influence for me to stay involved with the project.
My name is Claire Quinn, and I'm the lady that Cathy was referring to, the twins. And I came to the project, well, Cathy asked me, and from a couple of different points of view, I suppose I came to it when we lost our baby. Nobody, I wouldn't say nobody cared, but it was just, sure, aren't you lucky you didn't have two? You wouldn't manage the two. And the lack of understanding was as hurtful as losing the baby as well. And I, from my point of view, coming to this project, just to communicate with people and to have it talked about, because nobody, even after we had our daughter, when she was perfect and everything, nobody referred to our other daughter, absolutely nobody. And it was only within the hospital and the confines that they consoled us or anything like that. And just to open a discussion, which is very difficult to do, because I completely understand what you're saying. You're coming today with complete anxiety, like, you know, what are we actually going to see today? And even talking about it, and it's our story, and we're here in public talking about it. It's a difficult thing to do, but and the trust as well you have. I had the trust in Cathy, and Cathy had the trust in Marie, so I kind of said, well, Cathy knows what she's doing, so I'll just go with it, you know. And but also the other point was to mark our daughter, and there's this thing where I think where you're over 24 weeks, the child is over 24 weeks, they go on the register and all this. And we found out just before 24 weeks, so she didn't even get on that register. So this is a beautiful way of marking her and having something for her sister, who's her twin, in the future to say, well, look, this is what we have for you as a memory for my daughter. And I did it as much for my daughter, for her sake, that she has something. This project should be a real opener for people to talk about things and to experience it, remember it, communicate it. There's just so many different aspects to the project. So I'm delighted to have been involved, and thanks, Kathy, for involving us.
It might be helpful to for me to backpedal a little bit and just share with you, I suppose, a bit about my practice and a bit about me as a person. It's like you were saying, who is Marie, you know? And what was the reasons that drew me to this project. So I thought I'd back up a little bit and tell you a bit about myself and my interests. I suppose there's two strands to my practice as an artist. One is my kind of conceptual interests, so what keeps me up at night, what fires me, what worries me, what concerns me. And I realised after a long period of time, actually loss, in its many forms and shapes, was something that really interested me. It took me a long time to acknowledge it, and it kept creeping up on me. And finally, I kind of said, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this particular interest, and started doing work particularly about it, and especially about ambiguous loss. And by that I mean loss that might have a sense of presence and absence. So there might be a physical absence and a psychological presence, which a lot of the speakers here, people have talked about. So that's, I suppose, a big building block of my interest as an artist. And the other big building block is working with people. It's working collaboratively. It's going into a kind of a grey area of unknown. It's what, Julie, you would describe with me as kind of working on the edge. Not knowing what's going to happen, because working with other people is going to enable me to make work beyond myself, if that makes sense. So I kind of seek collaborations, and particularly I look for collaborations that are going to be deep and meaningful for me and the participant. So I'm kind of demanding, and I'm kind of honest about that. And I suppose I look for participants to work with me who can impact on my thinking, who can challenge me, who can impact on my thinking, who've had experiences, who have knowledge, who have belief systems that I don't, that we can shift and change each other. So I suppose that, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background to where I'm at as an artist and as a person, and where I came to the Amulet project with.
Bernice Jones is a participant in the project. She's been involved in the research phase that spanned 2 years, and she's also a member of this, what I can only assume is a highly dynamic group of women, i.e. the Ballyfahan Toga Arts and Crafts Initiative. Thank you.
Deep breath. I'd like to begin today, outlining what attracted me to and my journey through the making of this Amulet project. I'll try to describe some of the feelings that the project invoked in me and some of the benefits I found by being involved, and my understanding of what it was like to work creatively as a partner, as a participant, and as a member of the steering group. The Amulet project was for me a journey of trust, of sharing, of letting go, and a making of a creative response. Having previously worked collaboratively with the artist Marie Brett on several community art projects, a certain level of trust had grown and developed naturally between us. This trust was further developed and maintained as we worked on the Amulet project and through the counselling sessions that were provided to the partners by SHEP, that's Cushcame Counselling Service. These group and individual sessions help to facilitate and provide a safe place for creative dialogue around the difficulties and challenges that arose from working on the project. This counselling service proved to be invaluable to the partners involved. Having experienced an early pregnancy loss myself many years ago, I found I had a certain curiosity as to what kind of artwork could or would be made around these tragic losses. Pregnancy loss is so emotive that few people ever want to talk about it, yet here was somebody who was interested in making a collaborative artwork arising out of these tragic losses. And I found I had a growing interest in becoming a participant, and as the project got underway, I agreed to become a participant. The Ballyfahan Toker Arts and Crafts Initiative role as partners in the project was to provide support to Marie in the initial meeting with the participants. We also agreed to be part of the steering group, offering our assistance, guidance and support to the project. And I do feel that the steering role really did fulfil its role and help the project to achieve its best outcome. A creative and practical response that had come from a dialogue with staff at the COMH during the research and development phase of the Amulet project has led to members of our group making the very small and beautiful layettes for some of the babies that don't survive, and these layettes are donated to the bereavement and loss team at the COMH. But many of these layettes have also been donated to other maternity hospitals throughout the country. Now, as Marie began to meet with the participants and to explain more about the project and what it would involve, they expressed interest in only meeting with Marie. And as this proved best to meet the needs of the participant, Marie continued to meet them on her own. But she brought with her some of the baby layettes made by our group as a link to show our empathy and support to the participants. And it was later, as I stepped into the project as a participant myself, that I understood better the reason why it was easier to meet only with Marie. Because this meeting was sensitive and a bit emotional, and I think it would have been much harder to actually open up if there was somebody else there at the time. And when it actually came to the actual recording and the photo shoot of my Amulet, which I knew from the beginning of the project that this was going to be very difficult to do, yet I had to be prepared to take this risk if I was going to commit to the project. That morning as I arrived for the session, I remember feeling a very high level of anxiety before we even started the session. And as we started, I had to go really deep within myself for the courage to tell my private story. And there was a huge sadness in the retelling and the remembrance of the experience. I know I could not have shared this with Marie unless there was a significant level of trust between us. But for me, the letting go of my story also took a huge amount of trust. I knew once I had shared the story, I then have to leave it go, and Marie would then be free to choose what pieces of my dialogue that she wanted for her interpretation of the artwork. But through being a participant in this project, it has helped me to explore creatively a life-changing experience within my own life. And after the recording session and photo shoot of my Amulet, I found that I began to look back at that time in my life with more awareness of how my pregnancy loss has influenced many aspects of my life since then. It had dictated different decisions and choices that I might never have had to make. And the creative response evoked in me through the involvement in the project has changed how I feel. Now when I look back at that particular time in my life, I realise with greater clarity that many of these decisions and choices that I had to make then have actually had a very positive effect on me and my family. Though I had not expected this or any other change in my outlook to happen, I'm very glad that I have experienced this change. And today I'm looking forward with mixed emotions to viewing the new artwork, Animanesis, at the Serious Arts Centre in Cove. It will be exciting but also challenging to see what Marie's artistic interpretation of the images and the collected stories will be. My hope is that this exhibition will be a success and that it will be well received by all who come to view and experience it. That it will help to raise awareness concerning the health and welfare of all who experience pregnancy loss and those who care for them, and perhaps in the wider community as well. This project has been for me an empowering journey of trust, of collaboration and creative expression. And even though it's been difficult at times, I'm so glad that I have been part of it. Thank you.
As Kathy illustrated, this is the relationship between Mary and participant and Mary and everybody was founded on trust.
I just want to say I became involved in the project. I suppose it was, I'm with the Cushcame Counselling Service with the Social and Health Education Project, and we were approached to know would we provide counselling or support for participants and those on the steering group in whatever way was needed. But as it turned out, I too I had lost a baby 33 years ago. So it felt like for me, coming full circle and really appreciating that things were coming out of the shadows. You know, there was, because my memory was, I'd have been in the group where there was nothing happened. Yes. And again, it was, and I was very involved in with ISANS in the formation of it here in Cork back in the 80s. And we were a group of women doing our very best to support each other, all struggling, not knowing we needed help ourselves at some level, and then fundraising and lobbying for the stillbirth register. So this to me is just the opportunity to see, you know, all of our early work as well coming to fruition in what has happened. It is just wonderful. So, and I'm delighted to be involved in the project.
Thank you. And I need to introduce myself. I'm Anne-Marie Verling, and I work as one of the midwife specialists in bereavement and loss in the maternity services. And Orla is my colleague, and she works with me. And I suppose I feel very passionate about the whole care of mothers and families and parents around loss. Hence, I'm in the job I suppose I'm in. And I suppose a little bit of the fact that my own mother had experienced stillbirth and that had experienced infant loss, and as a sibling growing up in that environment probably has drawn me to it as well. And I suppose when the layette was mentioned in the first project, I suppose, and all of that, I would be very conscious and very mindful of being respectful of parents and their babies and how we managed and how we care for them. And I suppose as a midwife that would be close to my heart. So I came on board the project in 2009 from that perspective, and I wanted, I suppose when I came on board, to make sure that parents got that opportunity to hold and to cuddle and to protect their babies and to treat them as they would any of their children before or after. So that was important for me. And I suppose when the project progressed on and there was an opportunity maybe to get parents' opinions on maybe the care we've been giving them and the opportunities that they had been afforded, I was, I suppose, eager to go down that route with Mary. And I don't have the same, I'm not sure exactly how I was drawn to the parents that I contacted, but I obviously was. And I don't have the exact story that Kathy has around it, but I was also very conscious that I had been part of their hopes and their dreams, and their birth and their despair and their grief, and that was a huge honour for me. So I would be very protective of asking them, I think, to be on board, and I didn't want them to feel they needed to do it because I asked them and because they were connected to me. But at the same time, I had a sense that might influence a bit of what Claire said around Kathy, that she trusted if Kathy was asking her, then that might make it okay. Hopefully they haven't regretted that phone call. And I think it was just done in giving them information initially and letting them know that Mary might contact them, that I would post them some literature and see what they thought, but that there was no pressure to take part.
And did you approach certain women because of an instinct you had about them wanting to or needing to share an Amulet, or is it simply because you knew maybe their story more than other women's stories and you had an emotional engagement?
I think possibly I had connections with the people I approached initially, and like Kathy, I'm not as long in the job, but I would have lots of people that I could possibly ring, but I had some connection. You know, I haven't investigated it. I might now in my own way after this, but definitely I was connected to those people that I did ring, and had built relationships with them, and maybe felt that they trusted me enough to ask this, but could decline if they felt it was okay as well.
So you had your brokerage role, you know, mediation.
We were that, yeah. But I'm very fortunate, I think, still that I have I have a huge resource. I get to work in this area still. I know you're still going to be connected to it, Kathy, and other people here will be as well, but I suppose I can take this knowledge and build on it every day with the parents that I meet.
Personally, my brother and his wife lost 2 babies at 23 weeks, and being a midwife in the hospital, I would have been involved in the care of those babies and being present at one of their births, and would have been involved in even laying out one of these babies, getting the baby ready for burial. And at the time, this project wasn't started in the hospital, so we didn't have anything like these beautiful layets and amulets. And I remember trying to make my little nephews look presentable and dignified and give them the respect and the care that they actually needed at this time to make the this traumatic episode in my brother and his wife's life as meaningful as possible. And reflecting on the last few years now and what I have seen happening now in the hospital, and how much more dignified this occasion is, how respected and cared for these little babies are and the families, and how much more meaningful, and the memories now that parents have because of the work of this group, that I wish that was only possible a few years ago, as I said, when my nephews were lost.
As we started the research phase, I had just lost my husband after 2 years of chemotherapy, and like some of the girls would say, and the question that came up, why would you be doing this? Why are you in it? But for me, it was a journey I went on myself. Yeah. I felt grief is grief, loss is loss, and pain is pain. And it's only when you have people around you who hold you and support you, you can get through this. And for me, it was working at the beginning with people like Audrey, Anna Marie, and all the other members outside. It was their total commitment and dedication, their dedication to their, and caring to their patients. And it really, I had seen it with the loss of my husband, but I was seeing it in a light with babies, and it completely changed. I think it made me see that, you know, this thing, to come out from where this was and not spoken about in however we were going to do it. And it was really committed, courageous people who drove it. And they had to be strong women, and they did. And that's why we're here today. And as you know, I just feel it's bringing it into the next century. It's arts and health, it's creativity, healing. The thing about making the layets is not something that lots of people make. The blankets, booties, hats, but people who make the white sets, they know exactly what they're for. So there's positive care and intention goes into every one of these, and every parent from Anna Marie and Kathy and that, they know that.
I suppose the hope is that that work helps mark the shift from presence, the physicality of dressing a child, to absence, and the child being buried, or the child never being born, never being seen, never being cuddled or cradled. That absence, that loss, that death, paralleled with the same of the hospital. So that's my hope for that work, in terms of that whole idea of ambiguous loss and presence and absence, with the layouts in the hospital as parallels.
I have a question based on looking at the beautiful publication that we've been given today, and reading Louise's essay, and first I just really want to acknowledge everything that I've heard so far, because I think that this is a very honest experience for people, and that shows the level of trust within the project. And then within that essay that Louise mentioned, she had certain anticipation about what she thought an art project might mean, about making the work, about new work, not necessarily her experience of choosing an object and what that might mean. And I'm interested to know how Marie might have responded to that, if you're willing to share it or if you think it's appropriate as an artist asking a particular question to develop a project that changes the expectation of someone else's involvement with such, I suppose, with such intuition and sensitivity around the subject.
It's a very good question, and Louise is here as well, so possibly we might have a three-way discussion about that. I was delighted when Louise was offered and was prepared to write a piece for that publication. I was absolutely delighted. It came at the end of the phase of work when we'd worked together to locate an amulet and do the recording. So it was for me, the experience of reading the essay was quite profound in a reflective way. It didn't impact on the production of the work because that had been done, but I tend to work over quite a long phase of time, so the work wasn't finished. I think it goes back to what Mary was saying in terms of responsibility. It flagged that for me tremendously reading the essay, and back to what I was trying to say earlier about clarity of intent. But I could see that the project, from reflecting on Louise's essay, had potential to be much wider, and I could also see how, in a way, partnering with the Ballyfarn and Toa Art and Craft Initiative and the staff at CUMH, that's where we'd started, in a sense, of making new amulets, creating new amulets of remembrance. And after the 2 years of that, I felt that the next stage I wanted to take the Amulet project was to locate amulets that were already in the world. And I think part of it was because I went to Pitt Rivers Museum, Oxford University's Pitt Rivers Museum, and I revisited, after being there as a kid, their immense collection of amulets. They've got a huge international collection. And I knew nothing about these objects in drawers from all over the world, but I wanted to know about them. And I felt pulled to shift the project from creating new amulets to saying, can you trust an artist to share something that you as a family have located as your special object, and you might have stashed it away in the attic, or you might have it on your mantelpiece? Can you allow me in there? Can you allow me that different role? So, because I knew that, it wasn't in any way, it didn't throw me off kilter at all, Louise's essay. Whereas if I hadn't had that 2-year research experience, I might have thought, oh boy, the project's aligned in an odd way here. But I felt steady in it because I suppose I'd knowingly made the decision that we weren't going to make new works. Having said all that, what I really like working with people that are really honest and straight, and I just love that sense of not being fearful, and that we kind of trusted each other enough to be able to publicly say, well, maybe it could have been this and maybe that didn't work, and what about this? And to have that kind of open dialogue, I really valued that. Does that answer a little bit what you were saying? What you were asking?
Yeah, I think it does, really. I think it's just, even in the last hour, listening to almost a series of testimonies that are not only so personal but heartfelt and over long periods of time, and that sense of I don't know when it came up, the phrase that was used, coming out of the shadows. You know, once you're immersed in that experience with people, maintaining your original, or not necessarily maintaining it, but being an artist amongst that, and realising an artwork from that, made me feel like that was a huge challenge, which is, I think, what Mary was saying about responsibility.
I feel obliged to be a face. I'm Louise, and yeah, I have to get my voice heard over my pounding heart here. Yeah, and I don't know what to say. I came to the project because I already knew Mary, and I knew her from the art world, not from another world. So I suppose I was coming with an interest in making something, to publicly acknowledge my daughter's life, and there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of, I suppose, teasing out of ideas around the project, because I was coming with much stronger ideas than maybe Mary had hoped for. So yeah, I mean, it was very much a journey of trust. I felt, once I had kind of started kind of going, oh, I'm not sure about that, it was easier to keep that conversation going, and I really valued being able to be that honest. The artistic relationship was different to what I expected, and I still struggle with that. And there was a huge thing there, I suppose, because my daughter's life is, her physical life is ended, so her life is just continuing in how we honour her now, and allowing somebody to kind of take a bit of control of that was a really difficult thing, and that's still what the struggle is. So.
Catherine McCann is my name, and I'm a midwife in the National Maternity Hospital in Hall Street. So I'm only observing, but I just noticed something, and the last lady who spoke about the fear of what's going to happen to her precious story, I suppose, and what will become of it. And I was just thinking in some ways that Mari is almost like the midwife. And the midwife, when any woman is in labour, you trust her. Now, you're not giving away your autonomy, and you're not giving away all your control, but you trust her, that she knows. And it almost looks like, Mary, that with this you're almost like the midwife. You're helping to give birth to a new piece of art or a new story, but trusting, as you say, that it is the mother's story or the parent's story, but you're keeping true to that, but you're assisting giving rebirth to something else.
I think it's interesting, that point of where a participant agrees to engage with the process. There's been a lot of talk about that. And in particular, then that initial discussion that happens, and I suppose expectation that might build up as well, and kind of working through that on both sides, both the artist and the participant, in terms of what the artist is hoping for and what the participant is expecting from it, and how important that kind of brokerage is in between, how important the role of the midwife was. Kathy there, I think that's interesting, and kind of particularly here with where there's an awful lot of weight in that expectation. And I'd be interested to kind of just talk a bit more about that. I suppose the time, this particular project was a length of time, and that enabled that to be discussed, and an awful lot of people to do that, but sometimes it's short projects, that isn't always possible.
Like if you work with parents, the one things they will tell you when they are able to go back into society, and I mean even going shopping, they may not always go to the local shop, they'll go to the shop 2 or 3 miles away to avoid people, but when they do get the strength, they'll often find that society will avoid them, and it's a big deal.
But is that not the same as every day?
No, I don't think so. Some more.
Do you?
I do.
But I would think even with adults dying, that you would often find when you go back to work after a bereavement or something, that you'll get the same thing, that people will avoid you, so as not to hurt you and say the wrong thing. But I would think that's prevalent when not only babies die, but when adults die as well.
I think it's much more prevalent, 100-fold, yeah, 100-fold. Yeah. Because it's not that people are intentionally trying to hurt you. It's not that they're
no,
not good
it's the
people.
opposite. They're trying
They
to
don't know what to
avoid
say.
it. Yeah.
If it's an adult that dies, you can say, God, you know, I met him 2 weeks ago and he was in great form, or God, you know, your dad was a great age and he had a great life and he had a great sense of humour. But people feel with a baby, because they know the mother is so traumatised, they feel, if I go there, I'll make her worse. Where in actual fact, you won't actually. You can't make her any worse. But they think they will. And that's why they resist going there. I think that's the big thing. Whereas if you know, with a project like the Amulet, you know, if you see it, or you could say to somebody, come on, we'll go to Cove and we'll go to the Amulet project and have a look at that. Oh, what's that about? Well, come on, and I'll talk to you in the car. And they say, well, I don't know, do I want to go to that or whatever. I say, come and learn. And that's what we must be doing with society. Learn from this so that we are a support system, you know. And we have improved hugely. I mean, I would say for hospitals, like we've come miles and hundreds of miles. And but there's always room for improvement. There's always standards we need to be achieving. And this is big in the whole. It's not just, it's part of us as a hospital to look at this and to be part of this. And, you know, when we are helping parents keep, like I'm gone from the system, but don't worry, I'll be prodding along from outside. You know, to keep how precious the keepsakes are. Because at the time they say, parents will feel, no, I don't want any photographs. I don't want. Obviously they feel this will make things worse, where in actual fact it's a connection with their baby. Their baby lives on through this, you know.
I think as well, actually, that I think if an adult dies or whatever, you have some connection to the life that was lived.
Yes.
But very often with the baby, that it's the loss of potential life.
Yes.
And all that you've hoped for or dreamed for, okay, it's just gone.
Yes. And the wider community didn't know that child. Do you know, the mother, you talk about the memory of the pregnancy, the mother had that relationship right through the pregnancy, but the wider community, so there isn't necessarily, you know, often when we commiserate for somebody who's, you know, then we're bringing what we knew about the person, you know. So it's hard to claim that space for the lost child.
Historically, at least, the death of a baby, especially a stillborn baby, was handled totally differently to the death of an adult, because with an adult you have a funeral service. You have I know today that there's a funeral right for a baby as well, but historically at least there was normally no coffin, because there was going to be no funeral ceremony, because the baby couldn't be buried in a graveyard because the baby hadn't been baptized, and you can't baptize a dead person. So that religious, the Catholic component to Irish social history impacted on all those things. You know, it added to the fact there's no church, there's no religious acknowledgement of that person's life, and then you don't have the associated public acknowledgement. Nobody's going to talk about it, and so it's a very private thing. And someone mentioned there the graveyards, the Killeen, or the places on the landscape where babies were buried. That was because historically they weren't allowed to bury them on consecrated ground because they hadn't been baptized. So also the actual burial place was separated symbolically and physically from the rest of the community. So it's a totally different experience for someone who at least historically had lost a baby. You know, that there's not that formal or official acknowledgement, or you don't have people condoling you because, you know, it's taboo almost. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Della Noam, the arts coordinator of Cork University Hospital, but I'm just letting other people speak because the information is coming out in different ways. But just while Kathy was here, and you mentioned about the 21 years of your work, and I mean all your expertise, and I'm sure in those 21 years you've been to various conferences and international meetings about your profession and everything, and I'm just wondering, was there anything out there even, you know, similar to this, or was there any approach that would be parallel to this, or is, you know, how does this fit in with the bigger picture of you. I know it's a new in the sense of we've come so far in the 21 years, but I was just thinking on an international level, you know, is there anything where this kind of a project fits in?
As far as I know, there's nothing similar to this project, but I'm not 100% sure. But I suppose there is a huge issue here, I suppose, in relation to doing any kind of research with bereaved parents. There's a huge ethical issue.
Yes.
And so that would maybe stop a lot of people from doing research. There's a huge amount of research, of course, done, but it would be more so questionnaires. I'm not aware that there's anything tangible like this. I would imagine there isn't, but I don't know for definite. I don't think there is. And that's why I suppose it was very different, and we were very drawn to it because our culture in the hospital in Limerick, in the maternity, as is in hospitals in Ireland, maternity hospitals, is to, at all costs, you know, help the mum, whatever she might want, that we would actually help her with that. So, but not that I'm aware of, no.
That's very interesting to hear back, actually, you know, to put the, you know, everything in context about the significance of the project. And no, in Ireland, for instance, like I know Nicola is here from Kildare, and there has been other projects on a similar theme, like the Green Room project and various different projects. But that's very interesting.
But in relation to perinatal death, I don't think so. I don't, but I'm not 100% sure. But I don't think so. You know, it's a very powerful project. Yeah. And
for instance, we, like Mary and myself, were looking into, you know, what was happening in the UK, and we discovered a collection over there called Birthrights. And, you know, it was interesting for us because we approached them saying, you know, this is a project about birth, and it's looking at the loss side of the project. And they actually hadn't got anything in their collection to do with loss specifically. This was a first for them as well.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. And that's why I say today is a new dawning in so many ways, that we're putting it out there.
Yes.
You know, and it's for us to go forward from here.
Yeah.
You know, society as a whole.
The metaphor I keep thinking about actually is like, for all these years, like I know it just feels like that perhaps, you know, it's like somebody underwater holding their breath. And it's like some people have been holding their breath for 50 years, you know, and now it's like people are coming to the surface and they can actually just breathe, you know, it's like, and let out a big sigh, you know, of like kind of a catharsis, you know.
Kathy touched on, it's a really powerful question that we can ask ourselves again and again. Why do this project? Why make visible the invisibility of loss?
Nobody spoke about our scenario because it was unspoken about, and I really love that thing, making the unspoken visible or something like that. It's quite tangible, you know. Yeah, it's quite powerful that, you know, it is unspeakable. Nobody talks about it. Nobody anything about it, and it's finally. And even today, Darren was saying to me like, "Oh, bring everybody down and just visit this thing." And I was going, "Hang on, nobody's going to see this until I see it." And then if I'm happy with it, then I can tell people I know. And I'm, you know, even at home, we live up in Killaloe, and I have told a couple of people about it, and they said, "Oh, we'd love to see it." And I was going, "Yeah, you know."
You need to see it.
Yeah, I need to see it. It's, you know, you need to let it go, you know, into the world. So.
Yeah. But that's just it, though, isn't it? It takes almost another leap of faith to actually leave it go.
Yeah, even though it's out there, and I have to say I felt amazing, and it was fantastic to do it, and I kind of went, and it actually really helped me put closure on it, and it was a wonderful feeling, talking about it and laying it all out, and even my husband is, you know, very much part of the story, and putting closure to it. And it's kind of like, you know, it's a nice, not an end to it, but a lovely full stop. You know.
And I think that was a big part of the reason why to do this discussion now. Because when we see the artwork, it's another whole chapter then. And I felt it was really important to kind of talk and share the process now.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted, you know, to hear different people's perspectives, because the artwork's another chapter.
So you still have your story, but also exists is the artwork, you know, be disconnected but separate.
I haven't been fortunate enough to see the art already. I came here today just to kind of find out a bit more. As a as a 26-year-old male sitting down and hearing this kind of stuff, I know it actually it's opened up a lot more about the art, and I think like the way you approach it, it's extremely delicate, but it's really, really powerful. Like, but and it is a very sensitive issue that kind of socially taboo, I suppose you could call it, almost. Like, hopefully now, but I know that art is a dialogue, and it's, you know, you're supposed to be able to talk about these things, and that's exactly what you've done with the artwork. And having sit here and listened to everyone's stories, I kind of think that you know, everyone that's been involved in the project should feel an incredible sense of pride, and I suppose just being as brave to go into this and honest in the approach to it. No one would be disappointed with the art that you've done, and I can say that now. Like, so that's all I wanted to say.
You know, when I met Mary today, I said, you know, congratulations, the sense of it's a milestone, the end of a lot of hard work. It's the end of the second phase, if you like, the project. So what's next? And she, obviously, Mary needs to get through tonight, and the exhibition's going to travel to Waterford, needs to get through that. But in a sense, what is next? Is there a sense, perhaps, that, Kathy, you said that, you know, we've come an awful long way, but that all of this work maybe is shifting, or has the potential to shift what happens on the ground, what happens in hospital, and what happens beyond hospital, you know, and how we relate to each other around infant loss. Before we do that, Mary wants to thank a few people. And before Mary thanks a few people, I want to thank Mary, because I think we all connect through Mary, and there's a huge sense of hard work. But I mean, what is hard work? It's about care, it's about passion, it's about integrity, it's about authenticity, and Mary carries that forward in every conversation she's had with each of us at every stage in this project. She is really very inspirational. I know she probably doesn't want me to say this, because and she probably thinks this is not about me, but really she should take this moment, I think, to accept the thanks from all of us before we head to Cove. Thank you.